She was seated there, a black cloth bound over her eyes, perfectly still, as if expecting a return. The time was 9:04 a.m. in San Diego, where the sun already felt far too brilliant for such a heartless act. A white German Shepherd puppy, not older than 4 months, had been abandoned on the front steps of our shelter. Her small body was huddled in the corner of a cardboard box. Her ears were flattened, her paws shook, and the blindfold had been knotted securely around her eyes, as though the world was a sight she was not worthy of seeing. My name is Daniel. I am 57. For the last 3 years, I have been an employee at Sunrise Shelter, not out of a passion for the work, but because the quietness of my own house is unbearable. My wife departed after sorrow created an unbridgeable gap between us. I lost her, and subsequently, I lost my own way. Unlocking this gate each morning, with the hope that something, or someone, requires rescuing more than I do, is the sole thing that propels me forward. This morning, she was that something. Tucked beneath the puppy's front paw was a folded piece of paper, moist with morning dew. I retrieved it, reading it once, then again, as my hands trembled. Don't need her. Runs too much. Name's Beatrice. Tried to dump her, but she came back. Maybe someone else can use her. The phrasing was clumsy, but the intent was crystal clear. Unwanted. She runs too much. Her name is Beatrice. I attempted to discard her, but she kept returning. Perhaps another person can find a use for her. Use her. I knelt cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. The blindfold was knotted with cruelty, not merely to obscure her vision, but cinched so tight it would surely leave indentations. When my hand made contact, Beatrice remained still. She produced no sound, not a whimper, not a bark. She simply continued to wait. Who does this to a puppy? She allowed me to take off the cloth without any struggle. Her eyes, a gentle, pale brown, blinked quickly in the sunlight as if they still held a belief in compassion. I should have offered some words, but I was unable to speak. I simply cradled her against my chest, and the thought that crossed my mind was, how great a distance did she run before someone attempted to cast her aside once more? She had the scent of smoke and soil. The fur along her legs was matted. Yet, she didn't reek of neglect. She smelled of effort, as if she had struggled to remain alive. And someone despised her for that very reason. Her tail was motionless, without even a flicker. I rose to my feet with her in my arms, and the morning traffic continued its flow behind me, as though the world wasn't shattering right on this patch of sidewalk. Why would an individual blindfold a puppy just to be rid of her? I kept expecting to wake up, to find this was all some dreadful dream. The type that makes your chest ache before you've even opened your eyes. But she was real, as light as a whisper in my arms. I could feel the outline of her ribs beneath her white fur. She did not wriggle or fight back. She only trembled, a silent, bewildered shiver that was unrelated to the cold. I brought her into the shelter as if I were carrying something fragile. And perhaps I was. My colleagues had not yet arrived. The building was still peaceful, with the faint smells of bleach and dry dog food lingering in the air. I set her down carefully on a towel in the intake room. She didn't stir, only curled into herself as though trying to vanish. 3 years prior, I had ceased returning home after sundown. My house grew excessively quiet after my wife was gone. There were no disagreements, no footfalls, no sound of music, only vacant rooms and echoing memories. That's when I began taking night shifts at the shelter, handling cleaning, feeding, or any task available. Because in this place, at least the walls seemed to breathe. Our vet, Marissa, arrived early that day. She didn't even pose a question, simply sank to her knees next to Beatrice and began her examination. Vital signs are stable, she said softly. No lacerations, minor dehydration. Her paw pads are raw, however, like she's been on the move for days. Beatrice didn't so much as flinch during the checkup. She never broke her gaze from me. Her eyes followed my face as if she were attempting to decipher a puzzle no one had ever explained. You don't need to comprehend, I whispered to her. Just rest. You are safe now. She blinked one time. That was her only response. Marissa applied a warm compress to her front paws and then glanced up at me. Daniel, are you all right? I nodded, but I was not, because what kind of human being ties a cloth over a puppy's eyes, puts her in a box, and abandons her in the morning sun? I remained beside her crate for an hour after that, merely observing her respiration. I told myself it was to give her space, but the reality was, I was reluctant to go. I can't fall asleep in silence anymore, I murmured to the empty room. But here, at least I have someone's breathing next to me. She never barked. She never whimpered. She only stared, as if she held questions I was incapable of answering. And perhaps, just perhaps, she was not the only one. She would eat, but she would not rest. Most puppies, after finishing a bowl of food, will curl up for a nap. Not Beatrice. She would consume a few bites, then suddenly rush to the opposite corner of the room as if she'd heard something. She would sniff along the baseboard, scratch at the crate's door, and then pace in swift, frantic circles as if she were scouting for exits, as if she anticipated someone returning to take her away. I tried to soothe her with a gentle voice, and even with some music, but it was futile. Her ears reacted to every single sound: a door closing down the corridor, a cart rolling by. It was as if each noise was a signal of danger. Her legs were in constant motion. She possessed a type of energy not born from happiness, but from terror, from the will to survive. When the evening shift began, I remained. I informed the others that I would handle the nightly intake. The truth, however, was more straightforward. I could not leave her. Not after reading the note. Not after seeing the blindfold. Not after watching her sit there, sightless and silent, as if she had been waiting for her own abandonment. Around midnight, a calm finally descended upon the shelter. The sounds of barking subsided, the lights were lowered, and the world outside quieted to a low hum. I set up a cot beside her kennel and attempted to shut my eyes, but sleep was elusive. She began to whimper in her sleep, softly at first, but then with sharp, terrified yelps. Her paws twitched. Her tail beat against the plastic floor of the crate. She was re-experiencing something. Something she could not outrun, no matter how quickly her small legs might try. I recognized that sound. When I was 12, we owned a German shepherd called Toby. He was a rescue, emaciated and fearful of belts. For months, he would awaken from nightmares screaming. My father used to tell me, they don't forget what humans did to them. They just choose to love us anyway. I sat up, reached my hand through the bars of the crate, and laid it on her paw. Beatrice, I whispered. That's your name, isn't it, Beatrice? She went still. Her breathing evened out, her head inclined toward my voice, and then she rested it against the bars. That's a lovely name, I told her. It means she who brings happiness. I managed a weary, heavy smile. I just didn't realize yet to whom she would bring it. The very next morning, the first thing I did was request to view the security recordings. We had to find out who was responsible for this. Someone must have observed something, a license plate, a vehicle, a face, anything at all. The footage appeared on the screen, grainy and gray. The night vision cast everything in an eerie green light. The timestamp indicated 4:16 a.m. A shadow, low to the ground and swift, moved across the edge of the parking lot. Then, the silhouette of a small puppy appeared, stumbling toward our front steps by herself. There was no car visible, no person, only her. At 4:18, she sat down next to the door. At 4:22, she rested her head on her paws. By 4:27, she had not moved. I froze the video and stared at the monitor, my heart aching. No leash, no collar, just a dark smudge around her face. The blindfold. Someone had dumped her in the dead of night and fled. Left her sightless, left her trembling. And she had waited there for hours, hoping someone would open the door. What kind of individual does that? Marissa was standing behind me. Daniel, she said softly, you should probably see this. She passed me a new intake form from the examination room. She has friction burns on her wrists, she pointed out. On her back legs as well. It's not from an injury. It's from repeated motion. Either she was tethered and struggled to break free, or she ran for a very long time. I felt my stomach plummet. She ran here, I said out loud. She ran to the shelter. Later that afternoon, I contacted a friend who works with one of the local rescue organizations. She circulated a description, white German shepherd puppy, 4 months old, responds to the name Beatrice. Within a couple of hours, we received a response. I've seen her, the woman on the phone said. A few times near the foothills, always by herself, always on the move. But she consistently returned to one particular house. A specific yard that seemed deserted most of the time. Every time I tried to approach, she would run. Always back to that same yard. I couldn't dismiss it. That picture in my mind of Beatrice, small and white, roaming for miles only to return to the same place. Was she attempting to find her way home, or was she trying to get away and simply had nowhere else to turn? Did she try to go home? I whispered. Or did she try to save herself? I told myself it would only be for the weekend, that she required a break from the clamor of the shelter, that I was acting in her best interest. But deep down, I was aware of the real reason. I could not leave her by herself again. Not after the note. Not after everything she had endured. And if my wife were still alive, she wouldn't have permitted me to walk away from Beatrice either. So, I brought her home. She sat in the passenger seat for the entire drive, tense yet quiet. Her eyes took in everything. The road, my face, the view outside the window, as if she were committing the route to memory in case she had to run again. At the house, the instant I turned the key in the lock, she darted inside, not with excitement, but in a state of search. She paced through every room as if she were inspecting it for threats. Her nose stayed close to the floor, her tail was held low, and her ears were cocked for any sign of danger. She barked once toward a corner in the living room where there was nothing. She repeatedly checked the front door every few minutes. I attempted to lure her to the kitchen with treats and gentle words, using a tone of voice I hadn't employed in years. But she was not receptive. Her physical body was present, but her spirit was still lingering back in that yard, wherever she had come from. It wasn't until after we had eaten that I noticed where she had settled. She had curled up in the spot beside the old recliner, a place no other dog had ever picked, the one my wife used to refer to as her space. That was where Beatrice lay. It wasn't a random or casual choice. She had circled the area, sniffed it, and then carefully lowered herself, resting her chin on her paws and facing the same direction my wife used to sit. I remained there for a considerable time, simply observing her. I had stopped believing in signs long ago, but I felt a distinct shift in that moment, as if some part of the house recognized her. That evening, for the first time in 3 years, I switched off the television. She curled up next to my bed. I could hear her soft, even breathing, not running, not whimpering, just present. I closed my eyes. I hadn't known peace in years. But this small white puppy seemed to carry a silence that felt like safety. Sometime before sunrise, I awoke. She was not beside the bed. I moved quietly through the house and discovered her sitting by the front door, still watching, still waiting. Not for me, but for someone else. For someone she still seemed to believe might return. We began with brief walks, just to the end of our block and back. The first time I attached the leash to her collar, she tensed up, but she did not pull away. She followed me out the door as if she had been waiting for someone to provide direction, as if she had been trying to guide herself for too long. She didn't pull or lunge. Every few steps, she would look up at me, her eyes full of questions, but with a newfound calmness. I would tell her, "Good girl," and her pace would quicken slightly, almost as though the words themselves gave her strength. By our third walk, she was stopping at every street corner and sitting down without any command. By the fifth, she understood wait, come, and leave it, as if she had been born with those commands already known to her. Back at the shelter, Marissa observed her healing flawlessly by my side and arched an eyebrow. "She's remarkable," she commented. "Daniel, that isn't typical for a dog that has experienced trauma. That's exceptionally rare." "She isn't typical," I answered with a smile. "She's Beatrice." We approached everything at a slow pace. No force, no expectations. I found myself talking to her more than I had spoken to any living creature in years. Often it was just idle chatter. But she would listen, truly listen. Her head would tilt, her eyes would lock onto mine, as if she were absorbing every word I had ever wanted to express but never could. During one of our morning strolls, she discovered a pine cone in the yard and carried it in her mouth for the entire walk. When we returned, she placed it at my feet as if it were a valuable gift. I laughed, a genuine, astonished laugh. It felt as if it originated from a person I hadn't known for a very long time. I saw my reflection in the hallway mirror later that day. I appeared fatigued, but less hollow. There was dirt on my pants, dog hair on my shirt, and something different in my eyes. I stood there for a long while, just looking. When my wife left, I packed away every photograph, every smile, every memory I felt I no longer deserved to see. I told myself it was for the sake of closure. The truth was, I couldn't bear to see myself looking happy. But now, at this moment, I wish someone would take a picture of me, of the two of us. It took place on a Sunday morning. The dog park near the bluffs was peaceful, with the sun just starting to warm the ground. Beatrice had been behaving so well, focused, composed, and obedient. I thought, just for a second, that she might be prepared. So, I unfastened the leash. Go on, I encouraged her. You are safe now. Run. She glanced at me once, as if to confirm I was serious, and then she bolted. Her white fur seemed to glow in the sunlight, her legs extending fully with each powerful stride. It was the first time I had seen her truly run. Not out of fear, not on a search, but simply for the joy of running. I took a seat on the bench, smiling to myself. Perhaps she finally felt a sense of freedom. But after a minute, then 2, then 5, she was out of sight. I got to my feet, called out her name, and walked the park's perimeter. I questioned a jogger, a family with a baby carriage, a woman with a terrier. No one had spotted her. A wave of panic surged through my chest. Beatrice had disappeared. I combed through the park, then the parking area, and then the nearby trails. I called her name until my voice was raw. 10 minutes went by, then 20, then 40. Still nothing. My mind was consumed by images of the cloth, the box, and the note. She had run away before. What if, this time, she didn't come back? I drove like a man possessed, scanning sidewalks, shrubs, and alleyways. I took corners too sharply, nearly hitting a garbage can. I drove back along every route we had ever walked, every street she might possibly recall. And then, just as I turned the corner near the shelter, I saw her. She was sitting right at the front gate, in the exact spot where she had been abandoned. No motion, no sound. Just her, gazing at the door as if it might open again, as if she were still waiting for the person who had left her. I slammed the car into park and sprinted to her, falling to my knees. Beatrice. She didn't jump or bark, just slowly turned her head and looked at me as if she were no longer certain of who I was. I threw my arms around her and buried my face into her neck. She smelled of the earth, of dry leaves and pavement, as if she had journeyed across the world only to end up right back where she began. Why? Why here? Why not home? My home. I held her more tightly and whispered the only question I could form. Why did you come back here? She didn't respond. She just kept her eyes fixed on the door. What were you waiting for? 2 days later, a woman came by the shelter carrying a clipboard and dressed in a brown delivery company uniform. I knew her face, but couldn't recall her name. She gestured toward Beatrice through the glass of her kennel. Is that her? She inquired. I nodded slowly. Why do you ask? I believe I've seen her previously, out in Ridgeview. You know, close to the hills. I felt a knot form in my chest. When, a couple of weeks back, I was finishing up a route late, around dusk. This small white puppy appeared from nowhere and tried to leap into my truck, frightening me terribly. I assumed she might be lost, but when I stepped out, she took off. I moved in closer. She tried to get in? Yes, she really tried, as if she knew it was a way to escape. The woman paused before continuing. A man from one of the houses came out shouting, told me to leave. Then he hurled a bottle at her when she came too close. She fled into the trees. I didn't see where she went after that. I clenched my hands into fists. My voice emerged softer than I had intended. Which house? She provided the street name. My stomach sank. It was the same address where our volunteer had reported seeing her circling over and over. The place she always returned to. Only now it all made sense. She wasn't going home. She was running from it. The burns on her legs, the cloth over her eyes, the note that described her as too much. She had managed to escape. Perhaps not on her first try, or her second, but she had finally broken free. And each time she sought safety, she was punished for it. Until she found us. Until she found the door. I sat on the bench outside the shelter that night, observing Beatrice as she slept through the window. Her small chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. How many miles had she covered? How many times had she put her trust in the wrong voice, the wrong hand, the wrong door? And yet, she still had faith. She returned here not because we had found her, but because, for the very first time, someone had truly seen her. Because this place, with all its pain, was the first place where someone saw her. The paperwork took less than 15 minutes, but my hands were shaking the entire time. I told myself it was a temporary foster arrangement, not a permanent commitment, just a way to give her time to recuperate somewhere more peaceful than the shelter. That was all. But every evening when she curled up next to the couch and heaved that profound, full-body sigh, the kind that communicates, "I am safe now," I knew I was deceiving myself. Nevertheless, I signed the forms. Then, the email arrived. A couple from just outside San Diego, in their mid-30s and softly spoken, had seen her picture through the rescue network. They had a 9-year-old daughter named Mia who had been wishing for a puppy for almost a year. And not just any puppy, but a white one. They inquired if they could come and meet her. My heart seized, but I consented because I was obligated to. That is the rule. Fostering does not mean forever. And perhaps this was precisely what Beatrice needed: a child to play with, a yard to run in, and a family to grow up alongside. Still, I hardly slept the night before their scheduled visit. They came just after lunch, the little girl half hidden behind her mother's leg. I introduced them one by one and then brought Beatrice out on her leash. She walked with composure, attentive but not anxious. Her tail gave a slight sway, and her ears pricked up when Mia knelt down to the floor. The girl extended her hand, palm up. Beatrice showed no reluctance. She took a step forward, sniffed Mia's hand, and then gently nudged her head against the girl's chest. It should have brought me joy. It did. But as Mia giggled and put her arms around Beatrice's neck, I noticed it. The glance. Beatrice turned her head for just a second and looked back at me. It wasn't fear or confusion, just a momentary pause, as if she were checking to see if this was all right, as if she were making certain I was still present. The father looked up at me with a smile. "She's incredible, calm, intelligent, gentle." I nodded, attempting to mirror his cheerful tone. "Yes, she's one of a kind." The mother crouched down next to her daughter. "Mia has been through a difficult year. This would mean the world to her." I watched Beatrice lean into the girl's embrace, her body at ease, her breathing regular. She seemed to fit there, but my chest felt empty. Perhaps she had come here for them. Perhaps that was the purpose of all this. Or maybe she had come for me. We completed the paperwork in the side office, the air feeling too still for the loud pounding in my chest. The father signed the adoption form. The mother wrote down the emergency contacts. Mia drew hearts and paw prints in the margins while Beatrice sat quietly by the door, her leash looped through my hand. It was official. I walked outside with them into the bright afternoon sun. The car door was already open, the back seat protected with a soft blanket, and a brand new collar was resting on top. It was pink, with her name stitched on it, Beatrice. I knelt beside her one final time, fastened the new collar around her neck, and passed the leash to Mia's father. "There," I said softly. "She's yours now." He smiled and nodded, but Beatrice remained still. She just looked at me, waiting. Mia gave a gentle tug. "Come on, girl." Beatrice didn't move. Then Mia looked up and said, "I think she wants you to walk with her." So I did. The four of us walked slowly toward the car, me next to Beatrice, Mia holding her leash. I tried to control my breathing, but it came out in ragged gasps. My hands refused to stop shaking. I told myself I would let go at the car door. I told myself she would be better off. I told myself many things. At the car, Mia opened the door and knelt to help Beatrice get inside. But before she could climb in, Beatrice turned. She twisted free from the loose hold, leaped to the side, and ran back to me. She didn't bark. She didn't show panic. She just pressed her head firmly against my leg and stood there, trembling, as if her entire being was pleading, "Don't make me leave." I froze. The silence hung in the air. The leash dangled from her collar as if it belonged to no one. Mia observed quietly. Her parents said nothing. The father looked at me, then down at Beatrice, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Maybe," he said gently. "She was never meant to leave you." My throat tightened. I reached down and buried my fingers in the thick white fur behind her neck. She pressed in closer, still shaking. I hadn't cried in years, but I did in that moment. Beatrice never got into that car. The family understood. Mia gave her one last hug and whispered something I couldn't make out. Then she climbed into the back seat with a serene smile. Her parents expressed their gratitude to me, not with disappointment, but with something more like warmth, as if they knew they had just been part of something more significant than an adoption. That night, I filled out the permanent adoption form myself. No indecision, no second guessing. She was staying. Beatrice settled into my home as if she had always been a part of it. But beyond that, she became something none of us had anticipated, a healer. It began in a small way. One of the newer rescues at the shelter, a shepherd mix named Toby, refused to eat, move, or allow anyone to approach him. Beatrice walked directly into his kennel, curled up next to him, and stayed there without moving for an hour. The following morning, he ate. Then it was another dog, and another after that. Beatrice didn't bark often. She didn't insist. She simply existed, calm, present, as if she were conveying to them, "I have been where you are, and it does get better." Marissa started calling her our silent counselor. I simply called her mine. The house transformed as well. I began to place photos back on the shelves, not only of the past, but of the present. My phone quickly filled with pictures I had never intended to take. Beatrice sleeping on the porch, Beatrice in the passenger seat, Beatrice watching the sunrise with her head resting on my knee. One evening, sitting in the quiet, I looked over at her curled up on the rug and said out loud, "You would have liked my wife." She didn't raise her head, but her tail thumped the floor twice. I laughed softly. The silence doesn't frighten me anymore. Not with her sharing it with me. Some days, I still find myself wondering who tied that cloth around her eyes. Who penned that cruel note? Who allowed her to run for miles and miles, believing that no one would ever want her? But I no longer wonder why she came back. I may never know who left her here that day, but I understand why she returned. Some puppies don't merely endure abandonment. They guide us out of our own. Beatrice wasn't just a rescue. She was a reflection, a guide, a quiet presence in a world that is often too loud to hear what truly matters. She didn't need retribution. She didn't demand explanations. All she ever sought was to be seen and to come back to someone who would not turn away.